Andrew Lowe is Head of Technical Services for Challenger. Andrew and the Challenger team are responsible for the development and delivery of technical content, tools and advice for advisors. With more than 20 years technical experience, Andrew's areas of interest include pre- and post-retirement planning, superannuation including self-managed super funds, life insurance and the regulatory environment for the provision of financial advice. Please welcome Andrew.
This ain't a song for the broken-hearted.
Morning, everyone. We've heard a lot over the course of this morning around legislative change, and frankly, some of it's been a little bit scary. My objective over the next 35 or 40 minutes or so is to take other legislative change, some of which we've already spoken about today, but to dig into that for opportunities that it presents for advice for you and for your clients. So that's my plan of attack over the next little while. I don't have to go too far back to look at a whole range of changes that we've seen over recent months and years that have had a significant impact on your clients. I don't have to go too far into the future to show you a whole lot more change that's coming your way as well. And this is the environment that we'll spend a little bit of time talking about today, to dig into those opportunities that present out of legislative change. Some really exciting opportunities for the provision of your advice that will significantly benefit your clients. And in fact, for today's session, given that there is so much change, I've had to quite narrowly focus on what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about change that impacts both pre-retirement clients, post-retirement clients, and those clients that are transitioning through the duration of their retirement. So quite specifically targeting those sorts of clients today. I don't have a lot of time to talk about the impact of the 1 January 2017 rebalancing of the assets test, but certainly what we've seen over the month since those changes has been a lot of work done by advisors in this room to rebalance retirement portfolios for their clients. Certainly those clients that we saw lose $1,000 or $5,000, $10,000 or $14,000 of age pension needed your advice and guidance through that particular process. I'm not going to have a lot of time to talk about the 1 July 2017 changes to superannuation rules. But certainly those advisors that I've spoken to about those changes have told me that broadly it's more difficult to get money into superannuation today than it was prior to those rules. And certainly the impact of the reduction in the non-concessional contribution cap from $180,000 to just $100,000, and the effect of that being to reduce the 3-year draw forward provision from $540,000 to just $300,000 means that your advice is required a lot earlier in terms of pre-retirement planning. Certainly those sorts of consequences have limited clients' abilities to take advantage of the superannuation system and the tax-free retirement phase of superannuation more broadly with the introduction of the $1.6 million transfer balance cap. What I'm going to focus on today, however, is some freeing up of the superannuation contribution rules that from this year and certainly from next year allow different applications of strategy that provide increased access to the superannuation system once again. And in fact, one measure that we'll talk about will make available the superannuation system to clients that have perhaps been locked out of the superannuation system for years or perhaps even decades. So some really exciting new measures available that free up the superannuation system for those clients. What we are going to talk about today are the availability of enhanced retirement income streams. So really exciting development, and certainly plenty of development to come in terms of the income stream space. We'll have a look at the availability of these things called downsizer superannuation contribution and the ability to carry forward unused concessional superannuation contributions. So really interesting applications out of those rules. We'll have a look at a freeing up of the work test proposed by the government this year in the budget, not applicable until 1 July 19, but certainly will allow some clients to make contributions in the year after they cease gainful employment. We'll have a look at the expansion of the pension loan scheme, and I think this is a really interesting measure that some clients will look to use to supplement their income, perhaps most frequently late in retirement, perhaps where they've depleted their other retirement savings, but I think a really interesting one. Some proposals for changes to the means testing of lifetime income streams. And this is a really interesting one. I look out into this audience and I remember speaking to some of you in the room about 100% asset test exempt income streams. I remember talking to some of you about 50% asset test exempt income streams and the different types of income streams that were available. I've certainly spoken to a lot of you about a reducing assessable value out of lifetime income streams available today, and now I'm going to talk to you about the government's proposed changes to the means testing of lifetime income streams, where if a client puts $100,000 into a lifetime income stream day one, just 60% of that will count under the Social Security assets test. So some really interesting changes in that particular space that we'll look at, and we'll finish up this morning with a look at a proposal by the government to mandate superannuation fund trustees to consider the retirement income needs of their members. This concept of a retirement income covenant, where superannuation fund trustees need to look through their membership and appreciate some of the retirement income objectives that they may have. And finally, some superannuation funds being required to offer what the government calls comprehensive income products for retirement. So a really exciting time in the retirement income landscape. So, enhanced retirement income streams. Financial System Inquiry looked at a whole range of different measures. One of the measures that they looked at was the appropriateness of SIS minimums for account-based income streams. The government had heard from a number of submissions that SIS minimums were too high and that SIS minimums restricted product design. In consultation with the Australian Government Actuary, went away, reviewed the appropriateness of SIS minimums for account-based pensions. So the SIS minimum for a 65 to 74-year-old client is 5% today. Dropped after the GFC. There is that flexibility to drop it after, following a similar event in future. But broadly, the Australian Government Actuary concluded that on the basis of current life expectancies in retirement, SIS minimums were right at their current levels for the time being. Every 5 years hereafter, the Australian Government Actuary will review those SIS minimums again to make sure that they remain appropriate for the day. And at some point, if life expectancies continue to extend as they have done over the last decades, at some point the Australian Government Actuary will make a recommendation to government to reduce SIS minimums at that particular point in time. So that was the first part of that. The Financial System Inquiry was also evaluating whether or not SIS minimums restricted product design. And this is really interesting. Concluded, and certainly there are a whole lot of submissions around this particular effect, but broadly concluded that SIS minimums did restrict the development of different types of new products. And in response to that recommendation, the government has since legislated to free up a new type of product design. These have been available since the 1st of July last year. So the law has changed. It is possible to offer a tax-free retirement phase income stream. So with no capital gains tax, no tax on income in the structure itself, a tax-free retirement phase income stream that doesn't meet the SIS minimums. Clearly, account-based pensions still meet the SIS minimums, no issue there, but it's possible today to structure a product that does not have to meet the SIS minimums. And that certainly gives rise to some interesting possibilities as far as product development is concerned. We've seen a number of products launch into this particular environment, and certainly we've brought to market a particular product that fits these particular requirements, but presents some really interesting financial planning possibilities. These need not be guaranteed products. Certainly the product we've brought to market is a guaranteed product, but need not be guaranteed. So it's entirely possible to have different types of assets underpinning these types of products. If I say no SIS minimums, tax-free, it sounds all fantastic. And I suspect some of you are thinking, here's an application in terms of creating large lump sums. There are some restrictions that apply to these products, and broadly what the government has deemed appropriate is, while not restricting income payments, capital payments are in fact restricted out of these arrangements. And broadly it works like this: invest 100 today at, in this case, 65 for a 65-year-old male, and you will be exposed to reducing access to capital over life expectancy, such that at or after life expectancy, 19-ish years for a 65-year-old male, there would be no further access to capital. There are no restrictions, however, in relation to income payments. and income payments could continue for the life of the client if that was the type of product that you were looking to offer in those circumstances. So some really interesting potential opportunities for these sorts of applications. I'll give you an example of a product that's possible today and is in fact in market today. Looks like a little bit of a step back in time. For those of you that remember the early 1990s and earlier, you would have remembered deferred annuities. Deferred lifetime annuities available again today. The difference being deferred annuities pay tax at an accumulation rate of tax. These are tax-free retirement phase income streams. Where a client used $100,000 as a 65-year-old male today to purchase a lifetime income stream, those payments with no deferral period would start at about $5,500 per annum, fully CPI indexed. If that client deferred payments for a whole long period of time, and in this case I've gone a very long period of time, I'm deferring by 20 years the commencement of payments. In this particular case, payments wouldn't start at $5,500, they'd start at the CPI indexed equivalent of $27,000 or $28,000 per annum. I've probably chosen a really bad example to illustrate how this might work. For one, I don't anticipate that a whole lot of clients will be putting $100,000 into these sorts of products. I suspect it will be a fraction of that, a very modest amount, not to produce $28,000, but maybe $5,000 worth of income that might kick in at a later point. And I also don't anticipate that I'm going to see a whole lot of clients deferring for 20 years. We might see clients defer for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, or so on and so forth. So certainly I suspect that there will be different applications of these sorts of products going forward. But certainly, I did as part of this roadshow last year, in fact, as part of this roadshow, presented with Dr. Joanne Earle around retirees' preparedness for retirement. She talked about the challenge of pre-retirees contemplating life on the age pension alone. And while she suggested that a whole lot of pre-retiree couples could get by on the couple rate of age pension, she also saw the fear in clients' eyes when she talked about life for a single client on just $23,500 a year worth of age pension, which is the maximum rate for a single today. And so certainly buying, $1,000 a year extra to supplement that, $5,000 a year extra to supplement that could be a very cost-effective structure. We could also use this as a mechanism to run down and use as an endpoint for our other savings, our retirement planning. So really interesting sorts of applications come out of these particular products. You've heard today about the need for input into the legislative process, the need for your voice to be heard in consultation. And I think that's a really strong message. Eleanor talked about the need for change coming from those of you in the room that are closest to your clients. And certainly I wanted to very quickly use this as a demonstration of the power of your ability to influence outcomes for clients. So if you're talking to Phil about what you would like to see, don't think that just because it's your voice and your voice alone, it might not be heard or you can't affect change as a consequence of that. This is a real demonstration of this. Your last speaker, Eleanor Dartnell, and the Focus Wealth Advisors team, thought a number of years ago that it'd be a great idea if some of their clients, and for that matter, some of your clients, could contribute some of the proceeds following the sale of their home to superannuation irrespective of their age. The law at that time didn't allow that to happen. Eleanor and the Focus Wealth team thought so much of that particular idea, they did a whole lot of research, including the construction of a submission to government around that particular measure. As a consequence of that, and the dedication and follow-up of that measure through to including conversations with the Treasurer, we have today, available since the 1st of July this year, this measure, the Superannuation Downsizer Contribution Measure. And I think this is a really exciting opportunity, and it demonstrates that your voice can be heard. Has anyone thought it'd be great if the superannuation rules were different? We've got a couple of hands that have gone up. I'm stunned that there's only a couple of hands that have gone up. I think every one of us has thought, why the hell does this work like this? This is a demonstration that the rules can change. And certainly, I think an opportunity for your voice as you come across these sorts of opportunities. Since the 1st of July this year, if a client comes to you, that's 65 years of age, 75 years of age or 85 years of age, in prior years it may have been difficult or impossible to get money into superannuation. The rules have been freed up. Where that client disposes of a property that qualifies for the CGT main residence exemption. So it's a limited category of a limited category of properties that will qualify, but everyone that lives in a home might qualify. That's been held for at least 10 years. So held for at least 10 years, sell that property, I can contribute up to $300,000 of the sale proceeds into superannuation. There is an age restriction. I need to be at least age 65. There is no upper age restriction that applies. So I'm 65, I sell a property held for at least 10 years that qualifies for the CGT main residence exemption. I can contribute up to $300,000 into superannuation, and my spouse, if I have one, can contribute up to $300,000 as well, so $600,000 for a couple. Concessional and non-concessional contribution caps do not apply. There's no work test that applies to this contribution. And in fact, the only restriction that applies in relation to these, other than those that I've described, is to the extent that I've utilised my $1.6 million transfer balance cap, I would not be able to transfer it into the retirement phase. For any client who hasn't used their transfer balance cap, they could then transfer it into the tax-free retirement phase of superannuation. So I think a really interesting opportunity for those clients. I mentioned on the 1st of July 2017 that it got a little bit harder to get money into superannuation. The superannuation system also freed up for some of your clients in terms of concessional superannuation contributions on the 1st of July 2017 because we got rid of that 10% rule that ensured only people with a modest amount of income from employment could make personal concessional superannuation contributions. And last year, we saw a whole lot of Australians take advantage of the opportunity to make concessional superannuation contributions personally. I think a really exciting opportunity last year. And certainly, I look at that from both a pre-retirement planning perspective and also, for that matter, from a life insurance perspective. The ability to make a deductible contribution into a superannuation fund which funds life insurance premiums, an exciting opportunity since the 1st of July last year. This measure was big last year. It will be bigger this year. It gets better from the 1st of July this year as well in an additional way. And that is that your clients with less than $500,000 in total superannuation balance will be able to carry forward any unused concessional superannuation contributions that they haven't benefited from in a particular year. So I don't use all my 25 this year, I can carry forward it to next year, and in fact for up to 5 years in those circumstances. And I'll give you a quick example of how that might work. John and Mary, both age 60, John's earning 40 grand a year and he's got some super guarantee that attaches to that. Mary's retired. So she's not utilising any of her $25,000 of concessional superannuation contributions. They both have $200,000 in superannuation, so less than the $300,000 cap, so are able to take advantage of this particular opportunity. And all things being equal, probably wouldn't otherwise significantly benefit from this particular measure. But in this particular case, there happens to be a property that they own that has an unrealised capital gain attached to it, and at the point where it's disposed of, that becomes realised, adds to their assessable income. This is a strategy that we could use to offset the tax that would otherwise be payable in respect of the disposal of that particular property. Here's how it works. This year, John has $3,800 of concessional super guarantee contributions made by his employer. He's got $21,200 of unused concessional contributions from this year. That's all he can do this year, carry them forward. So he carries them forward to next year. He has the same contributions made next year, another $3,800. He can carry forward another $21,200. So by year 3, he's got $67,400 of concessional super contributions available to him, if he chooses, to make as a concessional super contribution to offset other assessable income. Mary hasn't had any concessional contributions this year or next. She's got the full $75,000 available to her in year 3 to offset other assessable income. So they don't sell the property they're probably not going to use their unused concessional contributions. But in this case, they sell the property, realise a capital gain, offset that capital gain with a whole lot of concessional superannuation contributions. Another measure that's freeing up the superannuation system for your clients. And certainly, I talk to a lot of advisors that are looking to restructure assets in the lead up to retirement. And I certainly think this will be a mechanism that some of your clients will be able to use to free up or reduce the friction following today's theme of that sort of transaction in the lead up to retirement. The government previously proposed eliminating the superannuation work test for clients aged 65 to 74. Could not get that measure through the Parliament. That would have been an open opportunity for older clients to be able to contribute to superannuation. Did not happen. The government announced in this year's budget a partial freeing up of the rules for certain clients. The partial freeing up will apply to clients with modest superannuation balances of less than $300,000 from the 1st of July 2019 for clients who are aged 65 to 74. And what it will do, it will allow them to make superannuation contributions for an extra 12 months following the end of the year in which they cease gainful employment. So if I cease gainful employment in the year I turn 67, I get to the end of that financial year, I can then contribute for the whole of the next financial year. And it might seem like a modest benefit, but I've absolutely had advisors that have called me, that have had clients that have retired in June. They've come to see their advisor in July or shortly thereafter, no gainful employment this year and unable to make a contribution into the superannuation system. This would allow those contributions in limited circumstances for clients. So I think another exciting opportunity for the making of contributions. The pension loan scheme. This is an interesting one. This is a currently available measure from the government. This is available today in a limited form. It's getting better from the 1st of July 2019. So some way off, but it's getting better. So the measure today allows your part age pensioner clients to top up their age pension to the maximum rate. So if you have a client couple receiving an age pension of, say, $30,000 combined, that's less than the maximum rate of $35,500 rounding, it would allow, under the rules today, those clients to top up to $35,500 their age pension by drawing against the capital in a property that they own. It is a loan from the government on which your clients will pay interest. The current interest rate is 5.25% per annum. But it allows clients who are perhaps assets rich but income poor to be able to supplement their income today. What's changing? The first thing that's changing is the range of your clients that will be available to. Today it's only available to part age pension recipients. From 1 July 2019, the government's proposing that it will be available to anyone of age pension age. So not only part age pensioners, but full age pensioners and non-pensioners as well. The second thing that's changing is the amount that clients will be able to use in this regard. At the moment, I can top up to the full rate of age pension, which would therefore provide no additional benefit for full age pensioners. The government's proposing that this increase to 150% of the maximum rate of age pension, such that a client couple who are currently earning or receiving the maximum rate of age pension of $35,500 could borrow an extra $17,800 odd a year from the government received in income payments to support them in their retirement. I get that you will have plenty of clients that are very, very happy that they've eliminated debt, that they've paid off their homes and don't want to talk about retirement. Absolutely get that. This isn't for them. This is a borrowing against an asset. But I would suggest to you that for some of your clients, it will be a very, very modest borrowing against what might be a valuable asset. So, it might be tolerable in those circumstances, and in fact, it might even be significantly beneficial in those circumstances. And I'll give you an example. I don't anticipate that a whole lot of clients are going to be lining up at the day they qualify for their age pension saying, give me 150%. But I would anticipate that some clients, as they deplete their retirement savings, they get down to a level of assets in retirement that they're a little bit uncomfortable in continuing to spend. And we see clients that might be 10 grand, it might be 50 grand, it might be 100, whatever your client's number is, but I don't want to spend any more and I'm restricting significantly my income. This might be a useful way of supplementing income in retirement for those particular clients. Quite an interesting point. When we started this roadshow, it was in Hobart last week. And I had a couple of advisors come up to me afterwards and they were talking about the merits of these clients bringing their children into the room around this sort of conversation. And they had quite different views about whether or not children had any right to be involved in this sort of discussion. And certainly one of the advisors had the very firm view that it was none of their damn business. You'll have different views for different clients in those circumstances, but I think an interesting, perhaps, conversation for those children of clients that are considering those sorts of opportunities. Means testing of lifetime income streams. This is an interesting one. I mentioned earlier, a lot of you in the room have been through 100% asset test exempt, 50% asset test exempt, and now reducing assessable value for social security assets test purposes, and there's more change on the horizon. The government's proposed that from the 1st of July 2019, any lifetime income stream which meets the declining capital access schedule that I showed you earlier, where you have an income stream that meets those particular requirements, just 60% of the purchase price will count as an asset through to age 84 and 30% thereafter. If I'm 5 years or less from age 84, it counts as 60% for a minimum of 5 years. 60% of lifetime payments assessed under the Social Security income test for those clients as well. I want to highlight that this does not affect account-based income streams, and it doesn't affect any clients that commence this sort of income stream before 1 July 2019. Government intends grandfathering of existing arrangements for the life of their arrangements in those circumstances. So what does it mean? On the left-hand side of this screen, I'm showing you the assets test value of, in gold, a financial investment. In blue, a pre-1 July 19 lifetime income stream. And in green, a post-1 July 2019 income stream. And I'd highlight two things. Relative to the current rules, where I commence a lifetime income stream on or after the 1st of July, I will get an immediate assets test reduction. So less counted from day one. But you'll also see that later into my life expectancy, I will have a higher amount assessed than under the current rules. At the moment, it's possible to buy a lifetime income stream that's asset falls to zero over life expectancy. That will not be possible in a post-1 July 2019 environment. So certainly I would argue that there will be some clients that will benefit under the current rules and other clients that will benefit under the new rules. You in this room are best placed to advise your clients about what might be appropriate in those circumstances. Certainly, I've spoken to a handful of clients of advisors about that change. And certainly it's fair to say that there are a couple in those sessions that are quite keen on the idea of improving year one social security outcomes. And I suspect from time to time you've had clients that are quite keen on increasing age pension entitlements. That might be one way of doing that. The other point that I'd make is, and I mentioned it here, for income streams that don't meet that declining capital access schedule, lifetime income streams, prior to the 1st of July 2019 is the last opportunity that your clients will have to be able to access a declining access schedule. So where you can, for example, structure a return of capital at a particular point in time or access to a capital amount, that will no longer be available in a post-1 July 2019 environment. So what does it mean if I start to model these things out? It becomes quite interesting. Here I'm showing you simply two assessments. On the left, current means test assessment. On the right, the new means test assessment of a blended portfolio. This is a client with $600,000 where 30% of that is allocated into a lifetime product, 70% is sitting in an account-based product. I'd highlight a couple of things. The combination of income that is produced by each of those two treatments looks relatively similar. It seems to provide them with the same level of income for about the same period of time. So that's my first observation. My second observation is the profile of that income. What makes it up each year differs quite significantly from year to year. And I'll give you one quick example. Year one, under the current rules, my age pension entitlement starts at about $12,000 a year. Under the post-1 July 2017 rules, my age pension entitlement starts at about $17,000 a year. So there would be more age pension payable under the new rules for a client that looks like this, year one. The rate of increase in age pension, however, is lesser under the new rules. And in fact, there are some years later where there is less age pension payable as a consequence of that assessment and the asset value that those clients have in those circumstances. Really interesting opportunity that arises out of that to have a conversation with clients about assets test and the impact of that on retirement income. The Retirement Income Covenant, also announced in this year's federal budget. A requirement, so super law will be changed to require superannuation fund trustees to 1, formulate, 2, review, and 3, give effect to a retirement income strategy for members. I'll make a couple of observations. The superannuation law was only changed a small number of years ago to require or to legislate a purpose for the superannuation system. The legislated purpose of the superannuation system is to provide retirement income to supplement or replace the age pension. That's our legislated purpose. This is part of a journey that we're locking in a purpose of superannuation around the provision of retirement income. The second thing I'll say is that new covenants for superannuation fund trustees, new requirements at law for trustees to do things, isn't new by any stretch of the imagination. And in fact, it's only a number of years ago again that the superannuation law was changed to require superannuation fund trustees to consider the insurance needs of their superannuation members in those circumstances. Trustees got by with that, and I suspect they'll get by with this. The other thing that I'd highlight is that there are plenty of people in this room that will be very well positioned to be able to help superannuation fund trustees, including self-managed superannuation fund trustees, with the formulation of these particular requirements, to consider maximising income for life, to consider longevity of members, to consider managing the risks of stability of income in retirement. I can't think of a better placed bunch of professionals to deal with these sorts of challenges. Providing members with access to capital, to consider needs and preferences for members of the fund, for all of these sorts of things. So I suspect that will be relatively painlessly adopted. There is one provision here that I will highlight. There is some ongoing consultation around, and that is around this requirement for some superannuation funds, albeit not self-managed super funds, small APRA funds, or defined benefit funds, to offer what the government calls a comprehensive income product for retirement, a CIPR. This comprehensive income product for retirement obligation will be for typically larger superannuation funds, and they will be required to construct a soft default option for the membership of that particular superannuation fund. I say soft default because the government's been quite clear here. Consent of individual members would be required to transfer them into that default retirement option, and I'll contrast that with say the My Super system, which I'd call a hard default system. If I join a new employer today, I don't give them a chosen superannuation fund. They are still required to make superannuation contributions on my behalf. They'll simply make it to a default superannuation fund. I do nothing, I end up in the default, unlike this measure. Certainly, I suspect Treasury and the government would be quite happy that I didn't do anything at retirement, because I'd still stay in an accumulation fund and still pay tax in the accumulation phase of that particular superannuation fund. But this is interesting. Superannuation funds would be required to offer a default option, and it wouldn't just be an account-based income stream. Government has said an account-based income stream alone probably won't cut it. And in fact, these sorts of income streams would be required to consider longevity, and in fact should plan to provide income out to ages 105 and beyond. I'm not sure the last time I did modelling out to age 105 for a client. It doesn't happen all that often in the modelling that I typically do, but yeah, possibility of investing for a whole long period of time in those circumstances. So we need to consider flexibility. If that was the only objective An account-based pension would absolutely fit the bill. But we also need to consider risk management and the provision of additional income. These are designed to produce more income than an account-based income stream drawn down on its own. Some way to go. 1 July 2020, proposed commencement date for this particular measure. But again, really interesting. There is some element here of Treasury telling you how to do your job. You don't get off scot-free in relation to these arrangements. And in fact, in the Treasury consultation paper, Treasury spoke of the expectations on advisors when they are providing replacement product advice in a post-SIPA environment. And in those circumstances, not only would you need to consider the accumulation element of the fund that you are replacing, but also the benefits that would be provided by the SIPA if the client happened to stay in that existing superannuation fund. So quite interesting that extension of those obligations in respect of you. I would highlight one thing, however. What I'm talking about here is what plenty of you in the room do today anyway for your clients. You work out what's the most appropriate combination of income streams to solve for the different needs that your clients have. Nothing new in that regard. And I'll give you an example of how I see some advisors doing this very thing today. Quick example, Trent and Tracy, both 65, $300,000 each in account-based income streams, 50% growth, 50% defensive assets, limited to other means, have come to you with two very specific retirement income objectives. Their first retirement income objective is give us approximately as for comfortable standard of living for as long as possible. So about 60 grand for as long as possible, CPI adjusted. If that runs out, however, don't talk to us about life on the age pension alone. And so what I've done to the 60 grand is cut out what you might call non-core expenditure, and we land on a number that looks about $42,000 a year, making up that portion of their retirement income, which happens to be more than the maximum rate of age pension. If we fall back onto the maximum rate of age pension, I've only got 35.5 grand a year worth of income, not the 42 these clients need in these circumstances. I get that some clients' essential expenditure will be less than 35.5 grand, in which case, no particular problem. To the extent that it's higher, bigger problem. How long do we need to invest for these clients? If you're having a conversation with these clients about investing for retirement, how long are we talking about investing for? 30 years. For some of our clients, it'll be 30 years for some of their money, absolutely. And for those very same clients, we're also investing until the first income payment is drawn from their portfolio, and the payment after that, and the payment after that. So not only are we investing perhaps for next month, we're investing for next year, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and certainly 30 years from now for some of our portfolio of assets. And that's one of the significant challenges to retirement planning for your clients. We know we need it to last a long time because life expectancies are extending, and certainly if I take the numbers from the Australian Government Actuary, for this 65-year-old couple, there's a 50% chance that one of this couple will be alive at 93 years of age. So a very significant potential time frame required for investing some of their retirement assets in those circumstances. We know these clients aren't getting by on the age pension. If I plug this into a typical retirement income model, it starts to look like this. This is a combination of income. It lasts for a good while at their 60 grand real. It then fails when their account-based pension or other assets fail. They are then dependent on the age pension alone in those circumstances when not meeting their requirements. That assumes the same level of earnings each and every year. We know clients don't get exactly the same rate each year, so we need to start modelling that out using different possible returns, and this starts to illustrate some of the potential outcomes for these clients. If we get poor returns early, we might fail early in terms of retirement income objectives. If we get positive returns early in the piece, our income could last a whole long time in retirement. One of the tools that everyone in this room will get access to for attending today is access to the Challenger Retirement Income Illustrator. It's available via the CPD feedback mechanism. If you're interested in it, please let us know. Happy to make that available. It'll let you run not 1, 5, but 2,000 of those scenarios. And in this particular case, what we see is that if I run that scenario 2,000 times, in only 26% of the 2,000 times that I model it, are we actually providing them $42,000 a year out to the chance that one of that couple's alive. I think a 3 in 4 failure rate for these clients is way too high. We need to have a conversation with these clients about what we can do to solve for their particular needs. We might turn down income today or next year or the year after or 10 years from now. That would go some of the way. We might talk about asset allocation. We might talk about layering in guaranteed income, like the SIPA proposal does about providing different types of income for different purposes. In this particular case, the maths is really simple. These clients need 42 grand a year of income. They've got 35 maximum age pension, 35.5 grand worth of age pension. I need to buy them 6.5 grand worth of guaranteed income. Can they afford it with $600,000? The answer is yes, they can. Effectively, it'll take 21% of their assets to do that in those circumstances, and here's the effect that it has. It broadly extends the duration of their account-based income stream, but it also ensures that when the account-based pension assets are depleted, they don't fall back onto the age pension alone, but fall back onto the age pension plus the additional source of income that they've got in those circumstances. There has been a whole lot change. Eleanor said that Phil asked her this question. So what? What does it mean? With that significant change comes significant opportunity for your advice. There are plenty of opportunities to talk to clients about these particular changes. Use these sorts of forums to talk to your colleagues on your tables about how these opportunities might work for your clients. Use these sorts of opportunities to talk to the AFA, talk to the AFA partners, talk to me, talk to Challenger. The Challenger team's here, available to have these sorts of conversations. Use the tools that we and the other partners make available in respect of these sorts of income streams. Certainly, in terms of technical, have a chat with me or the balance of the tech team at Challenger anytime that you'd like. I'd be happy to have those conversations. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll be available after the end of the session if anyone's got any questions, but thank you for having me along today.